What's going on everyone, Omahi, and today we're talking macro. If you're not really satisfied with macro tubes because the focus distance is limited, you definitely need a macro lens. I don't want to spend a bunch of money on a macro lens, so I decided to give 7artisans a shot. Look at this one. 60mm f2.8 full manual lens. This 60mm macro lens is made for APS-C cameras, but I'm a full frame guy, so I'm gonna also test it on my Sony a7 III at the end of the video. However, 7artisans make the same macro lens for different cameras, and the copy I have here is for Sony, but I believe you get the same results in all other versions. Let's put this guy on test and show you some of the work I did. I wanted in the first place to test the lens in the field, but what's better than making the setup here in my studio? And to create some cinematic shots. Using fish tank gravels, vintage letters, a flower, and a book of Game of Thrones. This is the setup I made and filmed on Sony a6600, Konova slider, and OC monitor on the top of the camera. I got some links for you down below for the reviews of the gear I used. So this lens is made out of metal and it feels heavy. It's heavier than usual lenses and it's about 550 grams, 19 ounces. And the lens hood is detachable, so you can take it off when shooting close insects if you don't want to scare them. When you take the hood off, you see the mechanics inside, and that's how the lens looks like though. Interesting. This is an f2.8 manual lens, and in microphotography you don't really need autofocus lenses because you're gonna end up focusing manually most of the time. That's why I prefer to save some cash and get manual lens instead. The aperture on this lens is manual, so you have to control that on the lens itself. There is no electronic connection on the lens gasket, thus no connection with the camera. The packaging on the other hand is elegant and feels premium. There inside you find a lens pouch as well. The Macro 7artisans lens shoot up to 1:1 magnification. This means that the size of the subject in the plane of focus is identical to the image sensor size in the camera. Here I got some images for you at different magnification. The first one is at 1:2 magnification. I'm at f5.6 and the image gets bigger at 115 magnification and much bigger at 1:1 magnification. The lens is usable for normal images at f2.8. But the focus ring is not smooth at that distance as you're shooting macro, so it does work but not ideal for that type of a job. If you make videos or photo work, use a tripod if you can. Or a fast shutter speed, about 1/250th of a second, but if your camera has sensor stabilization like Sony a6600, I found 1/25th shutter speed that works very nice. This is a macro lens and you're shooting very close subjects, so you will end up with blurry images because your hand shakes at that level. So make sure to shoot on a tripod or use fast shutter speed, or use an extra light if you can, especially if you're shooting indoor. You can bump up the ISO settings if you want, but you get noisy images so far. Guys, when you're shooting handheld, I recommend to set the focus first and use your hand to pull the camera in or out and hit the shutter button when your object is in focus. One more trick is to shoot multiple images at the same time, so if one of them is shaky, the other ones most probably not. Alright, so as I continue testing the 60mm macro lens from 7artisans, I came to conclude that this lens is much better and much useful in such controlled environment, where you have access to the light setups and having the camera on a tripod. Well, the other day I took the lens with me to shoot some flowers and insects in the neighborhood. And I didn't have much fun for a couple reasons. The aperture is not stable when focusing to a shorter distance. In other words, the 1:1 magnification is 2 stops darker than 1:2 magnification. So when you're focusing to a shorter distance, you lose about 2 stops of light, even when the aperture is still at f2.8 or f4. So you get darker images when focusing on a closer distance. So I have to increase the ISO settings though, and I'm gonna end up with noisy images. This image, for example, is in the afternoon at 115 magnification at f4 and ISO 1250. And the same image from another lens at f4 would be at ISO 400. I think you got what I mean, but in controlled environment where I'm shooting product, I have the chance to set up my composition first and handle the light settings as well. And that's where I see the 7artisans 60mm macro lens fits perfectly. Now we're testing the 60mm lens sharpness and image quality. Note, contrast has been increased by 50% in order to enhance the sharpness and analyze the images much faster. At f2.8, the center is much sharper than the sides and corners. f4 has remarkable improvement for corner sharpness, and it gets better at f5.6. f5.6 is the sharpest aperture of the 60mm lens. Same scenario with the center sharpness. f4 is sharper than f2.8, and f5.6 got the best image quality. f8 is very similar to 5.6. f11 and f16 are not recommended in my opinion. The 7artisans lens is made for crop sensor cameras, so when testing on full frame cameras, you get heavy vignetting on the sides as expected. But when you switch Sony camera to crop sensor mode such as the A7 III I have here, you get the best result. Now I know I can use this guy on my Sony A7 III camera and get macro performance for a cheap budget. 4K and 1080 video resolution remain the same, while the images are a bit smaller than original full-frame images, and that's gonna be around 4000 by 2600 pixels. Alright guys, if you end up buying this lens, this is fully manual lens, there is no electronic connection on the lens gasket, so make sure to enable release without lens function in Sony camera menu settings. Otherwise, you cannot take images cause the camera doesn't know a lens is attached. On this channel, we make camera gear and filmmaking gear reviews. So if you are new here, consider subscribing for more. Hit the like button if you find this video helpful. Thank you for watching guys, this was Oma and see you in another one.